I'm Captain Dan Cohen with Williamson County EMS, and we are here with Dr. Tanya Glenn for another episode of Rescue You.
Hello, everyone.
So, Dr. Tanya Glenn, we're here to talk about relationships today. This was submitted in all caps, this question, but I will not read it as if it were submitted in all caps. I don't want to yell at you. How can someone in this line of work deal with family members that don't understand or don't care how shift work works? And the follow-up to this really is, what is the most effective way to manage a situation where you have two first responders in a marriage? So how do we deal with that situation where my spouse or partner doesn't work in the field, and maybe the situation where, which could be even more complicated, where you both do the same type of shift work?
So the biggest thing is to communicate and then educate. So when a person is married or in a relationship with someone who doesn't work in the public safety field, they have zero concept of what it's like to work a 24-hour shift. They think that you sleep well at the station. They think you sleep all night. They have no idea how tired you are when you walk in the front door, how fuzzy your brain feels. They don't understand the adrenaline, glucose, cortisol dump, that parasympathetic nervous system backlash that you're going through. So the biggest key is to educate. I wrote about this in two of my books, and we often do, and I really hope we can do this, especially once this pandemic ends, is we do family briefs. I did a family brief for one of the fire departments that I work with in the Arizona area, and it was very interesting to watch the spouses go, "Oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense now." And I was telling them that if they walk in the door as they're coming home off shift, and you present them with a honey-do list of 17 things and 5 errands to run, and by the way, at 4 p.m. today, we have a 4-year-old's birthday party. I said, your firefighter will be acting worse than the 4-year-olds. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, give them a nap. And so they started to do that. And the firefighters were very pleased. So what we do is we educate, we normalize. I think every couple needs to figure out their rhythm, their pattern. So if you are someone after a 24 where you walk in the door and you absolutely need a nap, then try to communicate that to your spouse. Maybe present them with some of the education in the books and help them understand it's not personal. You're just exhausted, and that you're way better after that nap, right? Or you need to take that nap at noon because that's when you get tired, because that's when you really have the adrenaline dump. And what we do is we just communicate through that and figure out your rhythm. And we figure out what are reasonable expectations for that first day off, what are better expectations for the second day off, and that kind of thing. As far as the pure public safety couple, what I always encourage, you guys get each other in terms of work.
I don't know how they do it.
They do it, and they put it together, and they do all the shift work and have kids, and it's a lot of juggling, I think, for pure public safety couples. So what I always encourage the pure public safety couple to do is to just really focus on having your life outside the job. It is so easy when you both do this job, or it's maybe a cop and a paramedic, you get each other. It's really easy to talk about work all the time. I had a pure public safety EMS couple in therapy once, and I told them, your homework this week is to set a limit on the amount of time you're going to talk about work. And I gave them 1 hour a day. And I said, once your hour is up, the rest of the time you have to talk about other things. And they came back the next week and they were like, oh my gosh.
I've never been so happy.
They said for the first few days there was a lot of silence, and then they realized, oh, we've got a house, and we've got kids, and we have in-laws and mortgages and taxes and all these things that we should be talking about, that we were just talking about calls and work and rumors and BS, and so what we do is we really encourage those pure public safety couples to have a life outside the job.
Just as soon as they remembered the names of their children, everything was fine.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, that makes good sense. The thing that I always found challenging and that I felt bad about when I worked in the field was that I would come home, and even though my spouse was very much aware of those challenges and issues, she was educated about that, it was still hard for her because I was a 4-year-old. I wasn't necessarily very nice. I didn't use my inside voice when I should have. And even though all of those things were things that she knew, it was still tough for her, and I felt bad about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Communicate and educate. Those are the biggest things, is talk through it and get some literature. I think once people read it in a book, it really helps them understand that.
Yeah. Okay. Read a book. I like it. It sounds good. Another question about relationships. Dr. Glenn, how do we as first responders who have an innate mistrust in people start to let those walls down to let other people in, especially in a romantic way? We are forced to be strong day to day, which leads us to not wanting to let others in. So that is challenging. How do we run calls and deal with people that don't always have our best interest in mind, who aren't always honest with us, especially I think for folks working in law enforcement? How do we, as responders, get to that point where we can really, truly let people in and trust people?
So I think that the biggest thing to remember is that as much awfulness as you guys see, and sometimes evil and horrible, disgusting things that people do to each other, I think what happens is we start to think, when that's all you see, and I did that when I was working in the emergency room, you start to see all the bad and you think that is society and that is everybody. The biggest thing to remember is that there are really good people in this world. And when you meet someone, 100% trust your instincts about that person and listen to what your body is telling you in terms of your reaction to a person. If there's some doubt, if there's some concern, if the hair raises on the back of your neck, listen to your instincts. And when you find someone healthy, your instincts will tell you you're with someone healthy and good. And then over time, what you do is, I think that rather than, especially if you gravitate towards someone who doesn't work in public safety, you don't just avalanche them with all of your stories. You kind of ease them into it, and you get them sort of adapted to your sense of humor and your style. And what they do as they slowly sort of adapt to your sense of humor and your style and your stories is they begin to just sort of accommodate that, and they're not shocked and you don't feel judged. I think the biggest thing is that, paramedics and police officers on a first date, they'll just start throwing out their worst stories just to test people. And that's really not fair to someone who's never been exposed to this. But what I've noticed is that, spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends, they have moved into relationships with first responders coming from a place of zero knowledge of what you do to being really sort of like, knowing the dialogue and the literature and all the vocabulary and all of that. And so just leaning into someone that your instincts are telling you is decent and giving that person a chance to understand you is the way to do it. But again, if your instincts are like, get out, you need to get out.
So really, that sounds fairly simple. It's you don't have to necessarily read a book. You just have to listen to yourself.
Yes,
and be confident.
Yes, absolutely. Although there is a book about your instincts. It's called The Gift of Fear. Excellent read. If you want to really tap into what that feels like for you, your instincts and why you have them, that's an excellent read.
Okay, another book. Read a book. All right, very good. Dr. Glenn, thank you for talking with us today on Rescue You about relationships.
If you have any questions you want to ask us on Rescue You, go ahead and scan this QR code and send them to us. Please understand, in no way is this a counseling session or any sort of clinical advice. If any of the content has triggered you, or if you feel like you need help immediately, please reach out to your local mental health professionals or to any of your support teams that you have in your area. If you're in a crisis, here are some national resources for you to contact immediately.